Good to go.
Okay, so yes, welcome everybody to our Survive and Thrive goal setting workshop this evening. So I hope you all had a really nice day in the sun. So tonight's workshop does include some of the things that we've done on a previous goal setting workshop, which I know, Tim, you were at before. But what we've decided to do is take a bit of a twist on that because of everything that's going on in the pandemic, and think about how the current situation might be impacting on your goal setting at this time. So hopefully you've all got your handouts there and some pens and paper. And just before I begin, I'd like you to just have a think about your goal for this evening's session. So asking yourself, why are you here? So if you just have a moment to think about that. And then I'd like you to just have a think about, when I say goal setting, what are the thoughts that come into your mind? Are they thoughts that are positive and helpful about wanting to set goals? Or are they thoughts that hold you back and make you fearful of wanting to set goals? Okay. Would people just like to share on the chat whether they think mostly helpful thoughts or unhelpful thoughts when I say the word goal setting?
Can you see those, Nicola?
I can't see them, sorry.
Helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Helpful seems to be the main one.
Mostly helpful. So it's just getting a bit of a pitch of where at the group's at, and thinking about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So I work in mental health as a doctor, but also as a coach, and a lot of what coaching is about kind of helping people with their thinking about where they are now and where they want to be. So it's taking them on that journey, and that's why it's called coaching. So having a goal helps you know where it is that you want to be. So that's why we kind of find it kind of really useful as a coach to think about goal setting. What was it? Oh. But what's happening kind of at the moment? So I've actually added in this slide from a screenshot of something I saw on Twitter today. So I've got to credit a lady called Amy Cuddy for putting this on. But thinking about our current situation, kind of we're in a crisis, and this kind of fits quite nicely with a lot of the work and thinking at the moment about what's going on in the pandemic. So when there's first any sort of a crisis, there's often a sort of emergency phase, and there might be some quite clear shared goals. We might feel kind of quite energized, focused, even productive, because we just need to get the urgent things done. Then there's a period of regression, and what we've got kind of at the minute is a lot of uncertainty that's going on. And a lot of us are kind of feeling there now. We don't know what's about to be happening in the weeks to come. It's just not as clear as it was in the beginning about what you're supposed to be doing. And you can tend to lose a sense of purpose and feel tired and irritable and withdrawn and less productive. And then afterwards, you come out of that phase into a phase of recovery, and we start to adapt to the new way of being, revise our goals, our expectations, and begin to focus on moving beyond and getting by. And this is quite a normal reaction to that abnormal situation. And in that recovery phase, we may find that we've drawn on the experiences that we've had to actually make things kind of even better than they were before. So we've been through this journey of going sort of down into a pit and then rising back up again onto a mountain. So we're thinking about, well, what is different about goal setting then in a crisis and being in survive mode and then goal setting after a setback or a crisis, and then being in thrive mode, and that they might be different to each other. You might remember the brain that we had from last time's session about overwhelm. And on this, I've highlighted in yellow that most sort of sophisticated last bit of the brain to be developed, our thinking brains. And then in the middle, if you remember it kind of growing up, there was our emotions brain, the pink bit, and then at the bottom, the green bit, our survive brain. And I think it's worth thinking about this again in a crisis, like we did with the overwhelm talk, of thinking that any sort of uncertainty, it evokes our fear response. So like if we're faced with a woolly mammoth when we were cave people, now we're faced with kind of uncertainty in our future. And when we get a fear response, our brain, because we want to survive, it goes using all of the bits that it needs to activate the bits that it can kind of help us get through. So rather than using the kind of thinking brain to consider in detail kind of all of the possibilities that are going on, our more primitive bits of brain take over, and our emotions brain kind of help us assess the situation, whether this is kind of going to be good, bad, difficult, exciting. And then our survive brain, remember we talked about last time about kicking in to kind of tell us whether to get ready to fight or flight or freeze in that situation. So when our emotions brain and survive brain are going on, our thinking brain isn't working very well. So our kind of thinking is much more in survive mode rather than being able to make more complex decisions. And as we touched on there, what else happens in a crisis? We are uncertain of our purpose. We might feel like things that we thought that we were going to be or do before are all thrown out with the situation. It's interrupted our normal routine that kind of kept us steady, and routine and predictability make us feel safe. And when we're not in a routine, that can make us feel uncertain. And as I said, threat hinders our decision making that's going on. So we might not always be able to think through decisions, and so do things on impulse. And crisis, in a crisis, we might change our priorities. And so thinking of changing priorities, again, we talked about this last time, and I thought it was worth including kind of in a slide this time, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So designed by a guy, Abraham Maslow, many years ago, but thinking of our needs as a pyramid and needing to address those ones at the base of the pyramid first. So when we're in a crisis, we need to think about our most basic physiological needs first. So things like food, water, warmth, rest, our safety needs, feeling secure and safe. So, we want, again, I think we touched on it before, but, in a crisis and everybody's like rushing to the shops and we think we've got to have all of our food in the house. We've got to feel safe. Where is my family? We want kind of all of that in place first. Then we might be thinking about our psychological needs after that, and probably after we've kind of made sure that we're safe, we want to have a sense of belonging with others. It's quite important to still be part of groups, part of families, having relationships, and we've seen kind of the importance of still remaining connected with people. And then right up the top are those more kind of complex needs about achieving one's full potential. So achieving one's full potential might be, going out the window when you're thinking about trying to address those much more basic needs that are going on. But again, thinking it's not all bad, because could this also be a really good time for reflection and change as well? So kind of after you've had a crisis, and it makes you kind of review your priorities that are going on. and have had to do some things differently, and you might have found good ways of doing things differently that you wouldn't have tried before. But also things like, in this COVID crisis, maybe things about health goals have come to some people's fore, with things like the risk of dying with COVID-19 being so much higher in people who might be experiencing obesity and diabetes. It could be a time that reprioritizes a goal like that, and adds to the motivation to want to change. So this is where we've kind of got a bit of a poll, Ben, if that works. So we're trying to think if your health goals have become more of a priority in the pandemic or less of a priority. So what's the best? I suppose you could just put in the chat. Otherwise, more or less. So health goals kind of more of a priority or less of a priority for you in the pandemic.
Yeah, so we've had more. Yeah, everybody seems to be the same on more.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe our group's like a little bit skewed of people who were interested in it before, but it's interesting to think about, does something big that happens change where things are in your hierarchy?
Definitely people within our community who would say otherwise. So, yeah.
So setting the scene for thinking, actually, goals might be a bit different depending on where your head is at, whether you're in survive mode and you're thinking about things that are more basic, or whether you're starting to move out of that into that more recovery phase where you're able to think a little bit more about what's going on and setting goals that are maybe more further on into the future because you're feeling a little more certain that things will be okay. We'll come back to thinking about, well, what is a goal anyway? So interesting that quite often words like goals, actions, outcomes, aims are often used kind of interchangeably. But I think it's quite helpful to think about whether what you're aiming at is a results goal or a process goal. So particularly in health terms, kind of is what you're looking at as your aim, the outcome that you're going to get. So a particular percentage fat loss, or a weight in kilograms, or an amount in inches kind of around your waist? Or is it a process goal that you're going to be aiming to complete 3 sessions of HIIT in a week or something like that? And the reason it's quite good to think about that is coming back to, again, another model that we looked at in the overwhelm talk was referred to Covey's circle of control. So right in the middle, we have things which are within our circle of control. So the only things that we can have ultimate control over are our own thoughts and actions and behaviors. We have things that are within our circle of influence, and that might be changing some other people's kind of opinions by trying to influence them. And we have things that are kind of completely outside of our control or influence. And things that are in those process goals, so saying that I'm going to train 3 times a week, is completely, well, more or less like within my my control. I can control that kind of action, but I can't necessarily have complete control over what the outcome is at the end of it. There are more factors that might come into play with some other results goals. So other examples might be, wanting to win the Great North Run, but I can't completely have control over whether Mo Farah has been doing as much training as I have. So I can have as much control over all of the training that I do, but on the day he might beat me. So having to think then about why we set goals. Have a think about what might be reasons that we set goals, and can you put any ideas kind of into the chat of what some of those might be?
Motivation.
Mhm.
Focus. Focus again. Drive. To achieve, something to aim for. Yeah. Something to focus on. Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. So yes, we've got that intention, that focus. So we talked about a sense of purpose, and from a lot of the positive psychology work, having a sense of purpose is one of the factors associated with good mental well-being and kind of resilience to stress. So having a goal adds to your sense of purpose, something meaningful around your day. Having a goal, particularly one that you can describe in detail or visualize, they've done research that says that then you're much more likely to be able to achieve that. Setting a goal can help tap into the additional benefits of things like accountability, because you're able to articulate that to other people who can help you with that. I've said focus again. I've not been very focused. Align resources. So if you know what your goal is, you know where to put stuff. So things like your time, your financial investment, things like that. So you know, if something is a priority for you, you want to kind of align the resources that you've got to help you with that particular goal. And yes, a sense of achievement. So again, last time we talked about some of the different systems in our brain, and how dopamine is a chemical that we get as a release kind of when we get a reward for having achieved something. So when we have a win, we get a release of dopamine, and that makes you feel good. So coming to your handouts, just have a think about what is your healthy goal. Now you don't have to share what it is, but just have a look at that and think about what your healthy goal is, or what the result is that you want to achieve. Okay. So one of the things that's really important when we're setting the goal is to try and make it as clear as possible. Because as I said on that previous slide, kind of the clearer it is, the more you can visualize it, the more likely you are going to be to achieve that. So saying something that's quite vague, like, oh, I want to be fitter, or I just want to lose weight, it's really difficult to then imagine exactly what that is, or if you're communicating that to somebody or measuring whether you've made progress on it, that is very wishy-washy, isn't it? So people may have heard before of SMART being used in relation to goals. So how specific is it, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound? So thinking about how when you're thinking of a goal, if you're going to be thinking about sort of specific and measurable, you know, that might be in a particular weight or a particular percentage, or it might be a time for a run, or it might be a number of sessions you're going to do in the week, or we've had ones in the group, haven't we, of like percentage protein that you're going to do. So it can be quite specific what it is and measurable for that value. You can even use kind of scales for things that are a little bit more qualitative. So sometimes people will have goals around wanting to feel more confident or have greater self-esteem. And the ways that you might try and convert that into something more specific and measurable is just trying to get yourself to describe, well, exactly what does that mean? So if you said you wanted to be more confident, like specifically, what would you notice when you achieved your goal, or what would you be doing differently, or trying to find out if there was a time in their life when they'd felt like this before, and could they describe how that was, or if they're trying to want to be like a particular role model, what exactly are the features or descriptors that tell them that they've achieved that particular goal. And then you can use scales of 1 to 10 to help measure where you are on that. So if you, where do you think you are out of 10? I'm a 2. Why do you think you're a 2? Can you describe what a 2 looks like? Where do you want to be in 6 months' time? Well, I want to be a 7. Well, what does a 7 look like? You know, and then what would take you to an 8? So you can use other scales and then attach your own descriptors to those, and they just help you be a bit more specific and measurable. And it helps you kind of then when you're looking back to see what progress you've made. Then thinking about achievability, and this can be sort of tied up a bit with the time-bound part of it as well. So you might have a goal that you've set, but in the time period that you've put to achieve it in, that might not be as realistic for you. So you know, if I wanted to beat Mo Farah again, and I said I wanted to do it, you know, in 1 week, that might not be achievable, but potentially I said I wanted to do it in however long, could that be more realistic? Is it the reason why and how relevant it is for you? And this kind of gets down to your motivation for that particular goal. And I was listening to a lady called Brooke Castillo, who's a coach, and actually she described goals as a bit like relationships or romantic relationships, and that you might just not be sort of as intensively kind of involved kind of with that goal anymore, or it might be more like a long-term partner for you. So, or is it the right person for you at that time? So just having a think about kind of how relevant that goal is for you at that time in your life. What other priorities have you got going on? What could make it more relevant for you? So sometimes looking at what are the priorities that you've got on in your life, and whether you could actually align it with any others. So, you know, seeing a lot of Ben's posts about kind of helping people who've had children in their life kind of get back into exercise. Sometimes you might see an exercise goal as being contradictory to spending time with your family. And how could you see it so that it was actually helping towards that goal of wanting to be there and around for your family? So is it about thinking, well, actually, if I'm fit and healthy, I'm going to be able to be exercising with them, I'm going to be being a good role model, I'm going to be inspiring them? Or is it about, you know, thinking I'm going to feel guilty about spending this time for myself when I should be spending it kind of with my partner? Is there something else that you could be doing together to align your different goals? Also kind of, I suppose, asking just how much of a priority it is for you. So is it a priority, but how much, and what are all the other things? And does it come kind of above a 5 or a 6 out of 10 on your list of priorities? And if it doesn't, is that the right goal for you? You just need to kind of look back at adjusting that goal to move it up your priorities, or think of a different one. for where you are in your life right now. Also, I suppose it's about thinking about your motivation towards that goal, and what's your motivation kind of away from that goal. And when we were doing the session last time, we talked as well about how it's actually easier to work towards something, like with the carrot, than it is to do kind of away from things. So it's easier to, for instance, say I'm going to eat more protein than it is to say I'm going to not have that cake. So it becomes quite a bit harder when people are then wanting to do things like maintaining a particular weight or a routine. There's also less reward as well that you're working towards. You're just thinking about, there's a bit of motivation of like not wanting to go back to things like they were before, but that's harder than it is to work towards something that you want to have. So just going back to your handouts then, the next bit you'll see refers to what I've just been talking about getting a bit more specific. And there are a few questions there that you can answer. So just filling out again on your own sheets what specifically it is that you want to be different, how you'll know when you've achieved the change that you want to see, whether you can measure it, and if so, how, whether you can visualize what achieving your goal would look like, sound like, feel like. If you've got any pictures maybe that you could use as inspiration to help you with visualizing clearly what that goal is that you want to achieve. Thinking about the time frame by when you want to have achieved this result. And then just recapping that again into a sentence. So by the time frame, I will have what it is that you want to achieve, and then how you'll know you've done it because of what it is that you can measure at the end of it. I'll give you some time to do that.
Nicola, I think we should get 2 people to share them once they've got them written down.
If they're comfortable.
Yeah.
Got any willing volunteers?
2 people to share, please. Once you've got them written down, just pop it in the comments box, share or yes, and we'll just bring you on for a quick couple of seconds. Just 1 sentence, remember.
And your comments won't come up on the video, will they? So
No.
They won't know who said them.
No. Anybody wanting to share one? Give 30 seconds. Anyone? I think it's all heads down.
If people don't want to share, did anybody change their original goal to something different in any way after thinking about making it smarter?
Just pop that in the comments, yes or no. Got one. By the age of 46, I will have changed shape, will know via photos and body fat percentage.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why doing things like the photos as well help you see kind of the progress that you made, might help you with when you do maintaining as well of what it is that you're trying to keep maintaining. You've got a very visual picture of what you want to be, and if you do ever slip back again, you've got a picture of yourself, of what you want to be achieving again, which is even more powerful than it is of somebody different.
Somebody's commented, Nicola, saying that it's hard to make it smart as it's a long-term maintenance level goal. I know you've touched on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose we can also have kind of so overarching goals as well, and then maybe thinking about how that could be broken down into smaller ones as well. So yes, where it might be again a bit more vague to be creating a maintenance goal, which again becomes quite difficult. We quite often, don't we, sort of have smaller, shorter term goals that could help you ultimately to achieve that ongoing maintenance. So sometimes kind of setting other sorts of challenges, or it might be things like the process goals I was kind of referring to there, of in order to overall maintain my body shape kind of for 10 years time, I will have done 3 exercise sessions a week and maintained my nutrition at whatever kind of specifics you've got. So sometimes it's just thinking about the future that you want to have, and then working kind of backwards. What else could be smaller goals that get you to that picture kind of at the end? So we might have one, I want to be fit and healthy kind of when I'm in my retirement years, and in order to do that, my goal for this year and the next 5 years, the next 10 years looks
so
like.
a way to make that smart could still be, I want to make sure that I've completed 3 sessions every week for this year. Mm-hmm. Things like that. And then that's still under the bigger umbrella of maintenance long term.
Yeah, and I will be able to measure this by inputting it into the app or at home and things like that. So you kind of show what that evidence is. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you. All right. So we touched on a bit there in our kind of reason why before, but thinking for you then about your reason for this goal and what your motivating factors are. So the next bit on the sheet is thinking about some other questions. So we touched on priority. So honestly, kind of thinking, how much of a priority is this healthy goal for you, kind of given everything else that you've got on at the moment, and see if you can have a go at scoring that out of 10. Having a think about what are the good things that you're going to get from achieving this goal, those motivating toward factors, and what are the bad things, the kind of sticks that will happen if you don't achieve it. And then that leading on to you thinking about your top reasons for wanting to make this change. So have a look at your handouts and see if you can do that next bit then about your motivation.
Because you have multiple of these, Nicola, yeah?
Multiple
motivation
reasons, yeah. And I suppose, again, that like the more that you can have, the better, isn't it? And reminding yourself of that reason why you're doing it. As I said, the more that you can align goals in your life so that they're working kind of in tandem with each other rather than in opposing forces, the better. So what other goals in your life could you align that with?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Has everybody scored their healthy goal above a 5 out of 10?
Pop it in the comments. On the scale of 10. Is that the priority scale, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, looks like a full house of yeses.
And I suppose just thinking of Stephen Covey again, been quite inspirational, a lot of these. So he talks about sort of our days as like a jar, and then putting rocks in the jar, first of all, that were our most important things, and then our smaller stones, and then filling up the rest with sand. So things that are a high priority for should go in as our rocks in the day, first of all. So if our healthy goal is a high priority for us, the things that we're going to do to achieve that need to go in our day first and fit other things around that, rather than other things be going in and fitting in our healthy goal around them.
And everybody should have those as their big rocks, really, shouldn't they? I'm going to say that I'm biased.
But I suppose it's just an interesting thought, isn't it? Rather than some other things that just end up coming up for you, and you think, oh, I'll fit exercise in somewhere else. It's less likely to happen. But once you kind of realize, well, actually, this is a priority for me, so I need to plan this in first in my day, and then some other things fit around that. Or, it might be about things like, trying to get more sleep and more water, or whatever. You're trying to work on that first, and then do the less important things. Okay, that's motivation and your reasons. And then just thinking about achievability and the goal that you've got. How close are you to the goal that you want to achieve, and how likely you think you are to achieve this goal? And again, can you think of scoring that out of 10 as well? And then thinking about why you give it that number.
Pop those in the chat as well. 10 being completed and achieved, or 1 being miles away.
Or just how achievable it's going to be. So a 10 out of 10 is I'm definitely going to do it. A 5 out of 10 might do. A 2, I'm never going to get there.
7, 10, 8. Mm-hmm. 8. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, if it's that 7, just thinking, well, what might increase that achievability score for you? So could it be that you extend the time frame of what you want to achieve that in? Is it adjusting the target that you've got? So maybe it's just too big a leap for what you're choosing to do, and you could put that a little bit closer within your reach. Just because it's not very helpful, is it, to just sort of set ourselves up to fail. In some ways, great to have big dreams, but you're just going to be disappointed if you set the goal like too far away. It's going to be better to have some smaller steps where you get the buzz of that dopamine sense of achievement, and then set the next goal and the next goal, rather than just keep failing. So set it somewhere that you're likely to hit it, and then you can extend it. Okay. And again, just reminding of Covey's circle of control when we're thinking about that achievability, and whether all of the things that you're hoping to achieve are going to be within your circle of control, whether some of them are in your circle of influence, or whether what you're kind of hoping to achieve is completely kind of outside of that. So after we've thought about what is the goal and why we want to achieve the goal, then the next bit is how you're going to achieve it. So again, sometimes people just have a goal and then don't really think about what's their plan for how they're going to do it. So thinking about kind of what are your options. So for this, if you have got a bit of blank paper there, or some other space, I just wanted you to have, I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to really just have a brainstorm about all the crazy possible ways that you could achieve the goal that you've set. And it could be anything kind of absolutely bonkers. So if you had all the money in the world, or if you had unlimited time, if you had boundless energy, if you were a celebrity, if you had all the resources in the world, like how would you achieve that goal? And just have crazy ideas. They don't have to be, for this part of it, kind of things that are realistic at all, just ideas of how you could get to that goal.
Personal chef.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If anybody's got any of the little ones that they want to share, pop them in the comments.
So the reason, I suppose, for just thinking like this before you kind of have an action plan is just to kind of open the mind to a few creative possibilities, because often when we think about what we're going to do to achieve a goal, we kind of access things that we've already experienced or thought of before, and that might be all things that have failed before, rather than thinking a little bit more creatively. Your comment, Ben, there about having a personal chef and things. So once you've kind of had that thought, then it makes you think, well, I might not be able to have a personal chef, but what are the things that a personal chef would do for me that I could perhaps do a bit differently? So again, there are kind of possible other options that are there. If you don't want to be cooking all of your meals yourself, there are now some things like more affordable meal delivery services where they could be coming, so that you've essentially got meals that you want that are prepared for you. If you said, I remember kind of doing this exercise kind of once before, and you do think, well, if I had all the money in the world, and then you think, what would a celebrity do? Well, a celebrity would have a personal trainer, and then you think, well, I know who's a personal trainer. Ben Johnson's a personal trainer. So then it kind of leads you to think, well, what else would be different if a celebrity was doing it? Well, probably, not a great deal, because they'd be doing a workout kind of in the morning. So it just is to open your mind up to possibilities that you might have thought were beyond your reach, but actually when you then have another second look at it, it could be something that you could use or have at your disposal. So did anybody else come up with any other crazy ideas?
None have been shared just yet.
Okay, so but then said it might spark off something that is a bit more realistic, and then you can kind of highlight that and say, oh, that might be an option to pursue. So selecting your best ideas from that. So just go back to that a second. We'll come back to our handout. So still on then the planning. So we've thought of some possibilities, and then you think of some of your best ideas, but also then have a think about obstacles that might be getting in your way. So some of those obstacles might not be physical obstacles, they could be in our own heads. So we might have thoughts that are holding us back. that we might need to change to get around. They might be physical obstacles that we need to think about a plan to get around. Might need to think about what the effects of focusing on this goal might be for other people around us, or things that are going on in our life, so that we can prepare for that. So is it going to be that training for a triathlon is going to take me away from studying for my masters at this time? Thinking about what you're prepared to give up to make the changes you want to make. So everything in life is a trade-off, isn't it? So if you want to make that change, just being aware of what is the thing that you're going to have to give up if you're going to make that change, and are you prepared to do that? Then we've got what possible things you could do to help you achieve this goal. And then what things you've got that might help you. And again, think of all of the things that are at your disposal to help you with that goal. And then after you've thought of them all, you can funnel them down into thinking, well, which ones of those will work for me? But there might just be like more things that you've got than you originally thought about. I'm thinking also about who else could help you and what your reasons are for them helping. So is it about, again, people to be accountable with you? Is it about somebody helping with watching the kids while you're doing something else towards your healthy goal? Is it somebody else who needs to be on board with your meals because they're involved in preparing them and what you're going to be eating? Is it somebody who's going to help give you any knowledge or expertise in the area that you want to achieve? Is it somebody who's going to be someone who could come and join you on some of your physical activities? What are your reasons for wanting them to help you? Still seeing a bit of writing.
I think that's an important point for everybody to think about the who do you need to get on board to achieve your goals, because that's often quite overlooked. People pulling in different directions, causing friction. That's a massive barrier and obstacle for people to get around, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if there's somebody else that's like important in your life, how could you do something together rather than feel that you're trying to achieve very different things?
Getting across the importance of that goal for you.
So then thinking about your plan. So after you've done a bit of planning for that plan, where you've thought about possible things that you could do, people you could involve, resources that you've got at your fingertips, obstacles that might get in your way, that you've got a plan to get around them, then it's about making that final action plan. And we touched on before, what are the small steps that are along the way? So is there something that you could do that is going in the right direction in the next hour, in the next 24 hours, in the next week? So again, I can't think of like what the specific research is, but it was talking about the quicker you kind of get going on making progress towards that goal. If you're doing it kind of straight away after that coaching session, again, the more likely you were to achieve it. So again, that's got to be something that is going to be achievable in that next hour, but is there a small step that you can take? And remember, all the small steps add up to bigger leaps, don't they? And bigger changes. So what is something that you could do right away that's going to help you towards your goal? Thinking about who is going to be helping you, how you're going to measure how you're getting on. So you're going to need something that lets you know that you're making progress. And that also helps you know if things aren't going to plan. And we know, with like systems in the car or whatever, they letting you know you're going off course, because if we don't have something that's going to alert us to going off course and a plan for how we get back on track and doing that as quick as possible, we could end up in a completely different direction. So if we plan for how we're going to know that we're still on track and what we're going to do, if we go off course, we can try and get back in the right direction faster. So you've got your last bit on the sheet, just to think about what you're definitely going to do, how you know you're on track, and what you're going to do if you're not going to plan.
This is often a part that's quite overlooked with people. So not having the strategies in place for all the distractions that could come up. So I think this is really, really important for actually achieving something. I suppose being aware of it is really important, like, aware of the curveballs and things that can be thrown in your way.
And again, other people who can help you recognise when you're going off track and help get you motivated and started again for being back on track, or what resources, again, things like the community or the apps and things that will let you know, hang on, it's not gone right, but it's not a disaster. You just need to like change course again to get back to where you want to go. And then very lastly, before we've got the tips about the milestones that are important to celebrate kind of along the way. So just once again, just thinking about the idea about getting that feedback from achievement. So we're going to feel good by achieving things along the way. And if you set a goal, what are going to be those little milestones that you can celebrate? So is it things like the first time you went out on a run? Is it the first time you've done a HIIT session? Is it the first time that you managed to hit your nutrition goal of the day? So what kind of lets you know that you've achieved a milestone? And kind of what do you want to kind of set up as those things that will let you celebrate what's going on?
Something that does that very well without many people realising is MyFitnessPal tells you how many days you've logged in a row. That's quite a good little milestone checker.
So we're at the end now, but just to wrap up, I'd like to know from everybody what one thing they're going to do differently when they're setting their goals after this session. What's one takeaway from this evening that you're going to do?
Set some smaller, more specific goals. Realistic timeframes and smaller goals. few people type in. Be realistic. Regular sense checks. Smaller, more specific steps. Yeah.
Lovely.
Cool.
So any other final comments you want to make, Ben?
No, I think that's brilliant. Definitely something that everybody can take away from there. And probably something that's really relevant for everything that we do. It's all about changing things long term and making long term lifestyle changes, but it's all about having those little ones along the way that can often be forgotten about, that make the difference.
And especially kind of, during uncertain times where people find it difficult to see a long way ahead, having something smaller in a closer time frame might be more achievable in the current climate.
100%. Brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, thanks everybody.
No problem. Thanks very much, Nicola. That's excellent. Right, does anybody have any questions or anything? I'm just going to unmute everyone. Couple of comments coming in. Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Nicola. Thanks. If anybody hasn't got any questions, that is brilliant. And